Now that you have some familiarity with the different kinds of vessels that make up the circulatory system, we're going to take a closer look at the organization of circulatory systems. And we're going to start out with the single circuit system that we see in a fish. And what we mean by single circuit is that the blood is going to travel from the heart out to the gills and then directly from the gills out into the rest of the body. So the consequence of this, as opposed to a double circuit system, is that the blood is not being returned back to the heart after it goes through the capillary beds in the gills before being pumped out to the body. So the blood is being pumped out to the body after undergoing a large drop in pressure in these capillary beds in the gills. So this blood is going to be under lower pressure. And so let's take a look at the pathways this blood is going to take in this sort of simplified single circuit system. And we're going to use the shark as an example. So this is a sagittal section view through a shark heart so that we can see the flow of blood. So you can see the shark has a simple kind of flow through heart. It's like an elaborated tube with some muscularized segments to pump the blood through, but basically it's just going to flow through in a single direction, in one pipe, out another one. As the blood moves through here, it's going to be collected up and delivered to the heart through the common cardinal vein, and that's going to open up into what we call a blood sinus, where all of the different veins, the hepatic vein and the common cardinal veins, are going to merge together to form this cardinal sinus, which is basically just a section of vein that's more bag-like than vessel-like. And that's going to empty out into the first chamber of the fish heart called the sinus venosus. So the sinus venosus, its function is a collecting chamber to collect up all the blood returning from the systemic circuit and collecting it together and bringing it into the heart. From the sinus venosus, it's then going to travel into the atrium, which is a muscularized region, but fairly lightly muscularized. From there, it's going to go into the more heavily muscularized region called the ventricle that we see here. And this is where the blood is really going to gain a lot of pressure as it moves out of the heart. So this is going to be the main muscular pump of the fish heart. And that is going to pump it into another muscular region called the conus arteriosus. What the conus arteriosus is going to do is going to offer some resistance as the blood is constricted into a narrower vessel, and that's going to even out the blood flow so it's not pulsing quite so much as it's pumped by this muscular ventricle. It's going to deliver blood into the next vessel under relatively constant pressure. It's going to even out that flow. So the first vessel it's going to enter after being pumped by the conus is the ventral aorta. So the ventral aorta we see here coming directly out from the heart. Let's look at this at a slightly different view. We're still looking at a diagram based on the shark. Here is a schematic of the heart down here pumping into the ventral aorta. As the ventral aorta moves ventral to the gill chambers, it's going to branch off into these different aortic arches. So for example, here is the first afferent branchial artery, and this is going to be aortic arch number 2. We will look at the numbering system and the evolution of these aortic arches in more detail in the next web lecture. So basically the aortic arch is composed of this entire arch going from the ventral aorta to the dorsal aorta, including both these afferent branchial arteries, this next little chamber called the collector loop that encircles the gill slit and feeds the blood into those primary and secondary lamellae to become oxygenated. And then they're going to travel into the efferent branchial arteries. And again, these are part of the aortic arches. The aortic arches, all the vessels going from the ventral aorta to the dorsal aorta. In this case, this is a branch from aortic arch number 3. Again, we'll go into more detail on that a little bit later. And then these efferent branchial arteries are going to feed into the dorsal aorta, moving blood both anteriorly into the head and posteriorly back to the rest of the body. So let's take a closer look at that. So here is a blown out version of the same schematic diagram. We can see here the anterior branches going to the head. So here is that dorsal aorta that we just pumped our blood into from the gills. The anterior branches of the dorsal aorta include the internal carotid artery, which is going to deliver blood to the brain, and the external carotid artery coming down here that's going to deliver blood to the jaws and the face. Going posteriorly to the body, we see lots and lots of branches from the dorsal aorta. So let's organize these branches posterior to the heart of the dorsal aorta according to their targets. So first we can think about the branches that go to the two pairs of appendages. So the branches going to the pectoral appendages are called the subclavian artery, accompanied by a returning subclavian vein. We can see a little branch of it here. It's going to head out to that pectoral fin. And then that subclavian artery is going to continue on into that pectoral fin as the brachial artery, and again accompanied by a brachial vein returning blood back from that pectoral appendage. And then in the pelvic appendage, we see an iliac artery, which is going to turn into the femoral artery, and then again there's going to be an accompanying femoral vein returning blood back to the heart from that pelvic appendage. So iliac artery becoming the femoral artery, serving that pelvic appendage. And then going into the tail, we've got a caudal artery, which is basically just the extension of this dorsal aorta as it moves into the tail. And then again, that is going to be accompanied by the caudal vein, returning blood back from the tail. Then we have three unpaired branches from the dorsal aorta that bring blood to various portions of the gut tube. So first, we have the celiac artery, pictured here, bringing blood to the foregut. And then there's an anterior and posterior mesenteric artery. In human anatomy terminology, we call them the superior and inferior mesenteric artery, and they are going to be carrying blood to the midgut and hindgut, respectively. And then we have a couple of venous systems known as portal systems. So we've seen already that the normal pathway of blood flow is from an artery to a capillary bed to a vein. In a portal system, the blood does not go directly back to the heart from the vein. What you're going to have is another capillary bed followed by another vein that's going to then carry the blood back to the heart. And this is called a portal system. And we have a couple of different portal systems in the vertebrate circulatory system. The hepatic portal system, which is going to collect up all the blood from the digestive system. So this blood coming from the digestive system has picked up a lot of nutrients, but it's also picked up a lot of toxins from the food that was eaten. So the hepatic portal system is going to deliver all that blood from the digestive system to the liver to be detoxified before it goes back to the heart to be distributed to the body. The renal portal system collects up all of the blood from the tail in fishes. So the reason it collects up all the blood from the tail is that the tail is usually the main propulsor in fish locomotion. It's going to be highly metabolically active. It's going to generate a lot of metabolic waste. So all of that blood that's going to have high levels of metabolic waste is diverted to the kidney for filtering and cleaning through the renal portal system, again, before it goes back to the heart to be distributed to the rest of the body. So the hepatic portal system is going to be dealing with toxins that were included in the food that was eaten. The renal portal system is going to be taking care of metabolic wastes from this highly metabolically active tissue in the tail. So we see the hepatic portal vein right here. All of the veins coming from the different parts of the gut tube, from the intestines, from the stomach, are all going to converge to form this hepatic portal vein that is going to branch out in the liver into these capillary beds where they'll be detoxified, the blood will all be filtered, and then they're going to converge together into this hepatic vein, which is going to come through the cardinal system back to the common cardinal sinus and back into the heart to be pumped. The renal portal vein, again, is coming from the tail, so the caudal vein is going to turn into the renal portal vein that's going to carry the blood into the capillary beds of the segmental kidney in the case of fish, where it's then going to drain into the common cardinal system, into the cardinal vein, and get delivered again back to the heart. So we'll look in a lot more detail in this transition from the single circuit system to the double circuit system. But in terms of the organization of the vessels, what we see is pretty much exactly the same thing. So if we look at this example in the human, we've got the left and right common carotid artery that's going to be bringing the blood anteriorly toward the head into the brain in the case of the internal carotid, and the face in the case of the external carotid. We've got paired main arteries bringing blood to the two pairs of appendages, so the right and left subclavian arteries for the pectoral appendage, the left and right iliac arteries, which again turn into the femoral arteries going out to the legs. In animals with a tail, there's also a caudal artery that's basically a continuation of the aorta. We've got 3 unpaired arteries delivering blood to the digestive system, and again, they're called the celiac artery, the superior mesenteric, or anterior in the case of other tetrapods that are not humans, and then the inferior mesenteric artery. So we've got our 3 unpaired arteries. In the case of tetrapods, that renal portal vein has been lost, so the blood is delivered to the kidneys by this pair of renal arteries coming directly off of the aorta rather than going through a renal portal system. We no longer have that highly muscularized tail that requires the blood to be filtered directly from that region of the body. So we take the blood directly from the arterial system to be filtered of metabolic wastes. So as we'll see as we go on, what happens is that there's a complete overhaul of the circulation involved with the respiratory system when we get to tetrapods, and we will look in great detail at that evolutionary process in the next web lecture that discusses the evolution of these aortic arches through time.